Tonight, tax burden. Local breweries say enough is enough. Gold for gas. Mounties make arrests near Pink Mountain. And foreign worker scam. Local business owners are asked to beware. Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with yet another hit to the bottom line of small business owners. Craft brewers here in BC say they struggle to compete with their competitors next door in Alberta. Well, after years of COVID shutdowns, pandemic loans, and a downturn in the economy, they're saying to the NDP government, enough is enough. Noah Abel has our top story.
Craft breweries across BC are demanding a reform to the current tax system on beer production. The BC Craft Brewers Guild launched a campaign called Protect BC Craft Beer and is asking the government for tax equity. The jobs critic for BC's official opposition says David Eby's government is punishing local breweries wanting to grow.
Right now, we have a system that penalizes success. We are actually punishing craft brewers for creating more jobs, more opportunities, more tax revenue, and more demand for agricultural inputs.
BC beer producers pay 40 cents a liter until they reach Tier 1, set at 15,000 hectoliters or 30,000 kegs of beer. Then taxes progressively increase, reaching a flat rate of $1.08 per liter when production hit 350,000 hectoliters. Critics say the system favors large foreign-owned beer companies over small local breweries.
What we're asking for is a 75% reduction down to a number that most of our members are making, which is under 2,000 hectoliters.
Here in Dawson Creek, there's direct competition with nearby Alberta, which has a much fairer tax scheme. The co-owner of Post and Row says despite the current success of his brewery, they're paying a lot of taxes for a relatively small amount of production.
We've certainly scaled up in our production, but we're still very small. So we are in the lower bracket of tax of markup. And so currently we're in the 40 cents a liter markup.
Since the last tax reform 8 years ago, the world's largest beer companies have received $60 million in rebates from the BC government. Province-wide, Betty says 168 breweries have opened during that time, and none have hit the Tier 1 markup.
It's been 8 years, and in that time, not one of those breweries will make 15,000 hectoliters. In fact, the majority of them will take probably the 10 years of volume to make that.
Betty says the guild has a meeting scheduled with the Minister of Agriculture next month. Drouin is hoping a change is on the horizon.
If we can make life easier for our membership, in turn it makes it wonderful for small communities, rural communities, breweries across the province.
Back to the BC Conservative Party, Dew says the government is not keeping up with a fast-moving marketplace where there's competition from other provinces.
It shouldn't take a public opinion campaign for an industry association to get a meeting with the government about an industry that supports 6,000 jobs. This is ridiculous.
Noah Abel, CJDC-TV News, Dawson Creek.
Northern Rockies RCMP are notifying the public about a potential gold scam. Police saying 2 adults were flagging down motorists on Highway 97 about 40 kilometers north of Pink Mountain. The suspects appeared to be traveling in a Dodge Caravan with Ontario plates. The owner of the vehicle is known to have a history of selling fake gold for money to purchase gas. While police were en route to the area, they encountered 2 more people also believed to be connected to the gas for gold fraud scheme. These individuals were driving a black Audi Q7, also with Ontario plates. Now, police arrested all 4 suspects. During the arrest, officers seized fake gold hidden inside the center console of one of the vehicles and an undisclosed amount of cash. Officials with the Northeast BC Immigration Project are sending out a warning tonight. They're saying cash incentives are being offered to local businesses in exchange for hiring foreign workers from outside of Canada. These practices are not legal, and there are significant and regulated processes that must be followed in order to bring foreign workers into this country. The organization says attempting to bypass these processes places both the employer and workers at serious risk of legal and financial consequences. Businesses and community members are being advised to exercise caution. If approached by individuals offering recruitment services under the name of NEBC Immigration, The public is being asked to decline and report the interaction to the appropriate authorities. Well, the number of wildfires across the province has dropped sharply, and that follows 2 days that included heavy rain that doused some fires. The BC Wildfire Service says there are about 65 fires burning across BC right now. That's down from about 100 a week ago, with only 4 now burning out of control. 2 of those burning out of control are north of Fort Nelson. The Wildfire Service says the southern interior will continue to warm up and dry out. The warmer temperatures and higher winds is raising the fire danger ratings in some areas of the province. Mounties in Port Alberni are coming under fire after a video posted to social media shows a uniformed officer allegedly using excessive force during an arrest. The video, posted to Facebook, shows an RCMP officer repeatedly striking a suspect during an arrest in Port Alberni on Sunday. Witnesses can be heard yelling at the officers in an attempt to get them to stop beating the man. After receiving more than 450,000 views online, the RCMP detachment commander released a statement supporting the officer's actions. The statement saying in part that the suspect had already allegedly resisted arrest and assaulted the officer in the process, something witnesses at the scene could not confirm. Alberta beef producers say they're planning to leave the Canadian Cattle Association because of issues with governance and a lack of representation. CTV's Quinn Keenan reports.
About 50% of the Canadian Cattle Association's funding comes from Alberta beef producers, but that may soon change. ABP says it intends to split from the CCA when their agreement ends June 30th, 2026.
Right at the moment, we are still a member of CCA and will work with them in all areas of national development as we move forward.
The producers say they're concerned about the CCA's governance and fiscal transparency. They suggested bringing in an independent third party to review the governance structure. Only a third of the CCA's 27-member board is from Alberta, despite bringing in half the money.
Despite our efforts in asking for change, we have not seen meaningful progression or a willingness to address these concerns. We owe it to Alberta cattle producers to ensure their dollars are invested in organizations that will align with their values and priorities.
The CCA was surprised by the announcement. They admit the ABP leaving would be a huge financial blow.
Quite simply did not anticipate any kind of an announcement like that, and very disappointed. I found, I was really preparing to engage in a lot of the issues that they had raised.
There's a belief on both sides that a deal could be reached before the ABP's exit. Conversations since the announcement have helped clarify Alberta's concerns.
I really feel like we're on the same page. We're both motivated to ensure that going forward, CCA is an effective, unified national voice for beef producers.
Alberta beef producers will stick to their financial commitments up until its intended departure date. Quinn Keenan, CTV News, Lethbridge.
And we reached out to the BC Cattlemen's Association to ask if they had similar concerns. General Manager Kevin Boone saying they have no issue with the Canadian Cattle Association, and he adds he believes it's a negotiating tactic on behalf of the Alberta beef producers to address the issue of governance and the reassessing of representation. Well, the federal Conservative leader is a happy man today. Pierre Poilievre securing a return to the House of Commons after his big win in yesterday's Alberta by-election. Kathy Lee has more on the victory in one of the safest Conservative seats in the country.
Thank you very much. Pierre Poilievre is heading back to the House of Commons. The Conservative leader ran away with the federal by-election in Battle River Crowfoot, earning more than 80% of the vote.
No, I'm not surprised at all. He did the work. He was to every rural area in his riding.
I'm very disappointed and shocked at that.
I felt that he would probably win, but I didn't think he would have a commanding win.
That's who we wanted to begin with, right?
While he's the man more than 40,000 people in Alberta wanted as their MP, he'll have to show Conservatives across the country Canadians want him as the next Prime Minister.
The next step is going to be the campaigning he does between now and when Parliament resumes and how he conducts himself.
He received fewer votes than Damian Kurek, who won the riding in the spring election, then stepped down so Polyev could run. The Conservative leader will face an automatic leadership review at the party's convention in January.
That's probably enough to at least avoid adding questions to his suitability for the leadership.
Cheers!
Independent candidate Bonnie Critchley is toasting to her efforts. She finished second, earning 10% of the vote.
My entire purpose, when I started to right now, has been to tell Monsieur Poiliev that he is not allowed to just walk in and use us as a tool and then disappear back to Ottawa.
Critchley wants to see Polyev back in Battle River Crowfoot when he's not campaigning and bringing the riding's concerns to Ottawa.
Some relief tonight for Air Canada passengers. There's a tentative deal in place between the airline and the union representing about 10,000 flight attendants. After days of disruptions and cancellations, the national carrier is flying once again, although it'll be days before everything is back to normal. CTV's Heather Wright has the details.
Lines begin forming inside Terminal 1 at Toronto's Pearson Airport this afternoon, with Air Canada flights slowly returning to the air.
What's this process been like for you?
Hell.
The airline has warned getting back to normal could take 7 to 10 days, and many passengers are still stuck in limbo.
Getting bits and pieces. They don't seem to know what's going on themselves.
After 3 days on the picket line, CUPE, the union representing the roughly 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants, announced early this morning it had reached a deal with the airline. Full details of the agreement haven't been released, but Air Canada says its flight attendants will not only be the best paid in the country, they will also be compensated for pre- and post-flight work. With the deal now reached, the airline turns its attention to repairing its reputation.
We're deeply apologetic for what's going on. We understand the impact, the profound impact that this has had. We're going to do everything possible to get people home as quickly as we can.
Not paying flight attendants for on-the-ground work has been a common practice within the airline industry. And by changing its policy, experts expect other unions to ask for a similar deal in the future.
This will change the dynamics. This will eventually end up costing consumers more to fly because it increases the airline or the air carriers' costs of doing business. So we'll end up paying for this.
Prime Minister Mark Carney weighed in on the deal on social media, writing, "It is my hope that this will ensure flight attendants are compensated fairly at all times, while ending disruption for hundreds of thousands of Canadian families, workers and visitors to Canada." The strike has shone a light on the issue of unpaid work, with the Federal Jobs Department saying today its probe into these allegations will take between 6 and 8 weeks.
Air Canada says it hopes to get between 15 and 20% of its flights in the air today as it ramps up service. Because most of its fleet had to be returned to domestic airports due to the strike, every plane has to undergo engine and safety checks before it's clear to fly. Heather Wright, CTV News, Mississauga, Ontario.
And in Quebec, a class action lawsuit is in the works for Air Canada passengers who were affected by the strike. The lead plaintiff in the proposed lawsuit was rebooked on a flight 86 hours after her cancellation. Her lawyer says that violates the air passenger protection rules, which states Air Canada has up to 2 days to rebook on its own planes or on the next available flight on a different carrier. The proposed class action also states Air Canada misled its customers to convince them to accept a refund. Meantime, a second class action lawsuit has now been proposed against Air Canada and CUPE. It claims the union continued on with its strike illegally. Canada's inflation rate eased slightly in July, rising 1.7% on a year-over-year basis, and that's down from the 1.9% increase in June. Leading the increase was groceries, which rose 3.4%, and shelter, which edged up by 3%. Those increases were moderated by a big drop at the pumps across the country. Gasoline prices fell by just over 16%. Now all eyes will be on the Bank of Canada to see how it reacts to the latest figures. Starbucks workers across North America are getting a raise. The company is saying it'll provide a 2% hike to all salaried employees. The raise will apply to all corporate staff, workers in manufacturing and distribution, as well as store managers. Starbucks is also in the middle of contract negotiations with its unionized baristas. Prime Minister Mark Carney took part today in a virtual meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing aimed at supporting Ukraine. The video call was hosted by the President of France Emmanuel Macron briefing fellow leaders on yesterday's talks between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Carney recently affirmed Canada's steadfast support for Ukraine, offering $2 billion in military support. All right, please do stay tuned. Noah will be right back after the break with weather.